Welcome to Playing for Tesuji, a two-player cardboard reality gaming podcast about Go and other two-player games, basically whatever suits my fancy. Today, I'm joined by Dylan, a fellow cardboard reality host, to talk about Ortus Regni, a game of his that he just taught me this morning, actually. So you get to see my very first initial impressions. I got to play 2 games of this. It's a cool two-player dueling card game. And then after that, we talk about what we've been into recently, including some wrestling that Dylan has gotten into, and Chernobyl, the television series on HBO that I've really started to enjoy. And then I wrap it up by showing you my album of the week. Enjoy the show. Today on Playing for Tesuji, I'm joined by my best bud, Dylan.
That's me! Moving up the ranks, it's Dylan.
How the hell are you?
I'm doing good.
Welcome to my show.
Yep. First time I've been on.
I get to play a lot of two-player games with my buds and then talk about it, so that's good.
Yeah, that's always nice.
So,
especially since you love two-player games.
Yeah, so I wanted to do one of these with Dylan, and he has actually 2 new two-player games, Ortus Regni and Duelosaur Island.
Oh yeah, that I did bring. I forgot I brought
so
that.
He brought both today. He was like, all right, which one do you want to play? And we were planning on Ortus Regni, so we went with that one. Never heard of this game before. It is a 2014 small Kickstarter from an unknown publisher.
Yeah, pretty much unknown. The name is John Sudbury.
Yep.
John Sudbury's the designer, made by John Sudbury Games. So like you can tell, it's obviously a small Kickstarter and publisher. Yeah,
and if this is one that you like, after you listen to this, if you're interested in buying it, you can still get it, but you have to go to john-sudbury-games .myshopify.com.
It'll be in the description below.
It sure will. Joel will put it in the show notes in the description below, so check that out. But yeah, you can buy it there. It's $60 and the expansions are $40, but we'll get into all that later in the show. Mm-hmm. So how did you hear about this game? Because I've never heard of it before.
My good friend, Bottom Shelf Gaming. I've linked a few of his videos in Slack chat and talked about him before. He reviewed this.
Okay.
And it's strange.
What did he think of it?
I think I don't remember.
You don't remember?
It's been a while.
Well, at least the review was positive enough that you were intrigued.
Yeah. It's just strange, and I don't know if you want to get right into like what makes it strange, but the first thing that's obviously glaring, if you look at the game, it's hard to tell from camera to here, but
yeah, if you're watching on YouTube,
these cards have no text on them in any way, shape, or form.
This is, think of like a dueling card game. It's not mage versus mage like Magic the Gathering or Ashes or anything like that, but it's still kind of a similar feel of building up a tableau, building up your defense, and trying to attack your opponent. Yep. There's not really net decking, but there is consideration to be had with making sure that you don't run out of cards to draw.
Right.
So yeah, just dive in. Give us a brief overview, Dylan. What is this game about?
So the idea is that each player plays as competing earls, building up their own earldoms. Ortus Regni actually is like basically means birth of a kingdom. And that's kind of like what this simulates. You're going to be playing property cards, building up your fiefs. You're going to have these individual like tableaus that'll have lands, that'll have religious buildings, that'll have the market. And then you're going to be using those to recruit in your soldiers. Mm-hmm. You also have face cards, which are like your prince, vassal, champion, monk, mercenaries. And you'll be using those to lead your fiefs. Then you also have the political cards, which are kind of the backstabby, take that cards.
Yeah.
But you also have allies that are another political card that can fight that off. And also the cool thing about each of these cards is every card also on the back has a tower, and you can use those as a passive defense bonus.
Which is a free action. So on your turn, you take one action, and you can also take as many defensive free actions that you want. And those free actions, are just taking cards from your hand, laying them face down in front of you on the tower side. Their back art has a tower picture. And it just acts as defense for when your fiefdom is being attacked.
Right. So then there's 3 types of combats. You can either attack those towers. You can either attack the towers, attack the lands or the fief itself, like the property cards.
Yep.
Or you can attack the castle or the palace.
Yep.
And so there are different things that you're trying to target. You're either weakening their opportunity to recruit. You're trying to go in for the final blow or weaken their defenses before you go in to do your big damage.
Yep. And to win, you either take out all of their castles and their palace, or when you go to draw a card, if you don't have any cards to draw, you lose the game.
Because it's basically simulating that your life expectancy has ended and you haven't declared an heir. And that's one of the things you can do. You can bequeath a
So your
prince.
Your reign is over, basically.
Yep. And you haven't set it up to where your reign will continue through your children.
Yep. A lot of cool strategies that have kind of come up in this game. So we started by playing, and I think this is really important to learn the game, is the tutorial. I don't even know if you call it a tutorial, but it's like the basic deck configuration.
So one of the things you can actually buy, I think maybe from their site, you can buy the tutorial deck with text on the cards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to where like half of the card says what it does.
That's probably a good way to actually teach.
Mm-hmm.
That's neat.
I just bought this secondhand. The cards were new and shrink, so it didn't have the tutorial stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The tutorial deck isn't even listed in the rule book. It's one of the things you have to look up online. And I found it, assembled those decks, and then we just kind of play them. Kind of gives you a feel of how the different strategies are going to go, the importance of... because they're almost multi-use cards in a way. Like you think of the vassal. The vassal can be used in 3 ways. He can be a lord. He can 4 really. He can be a lord in a like a castle.
You can discard him to put. He basically is sent as an emissary to the Vikings, so you can have them be potentially more loyal to you.
Yes. You can. He can compete in jousts.
Yep.
Which is another thing we haven't even got into. It's like a mini game of poker where you bet property.
And then he can be used in
battle.
In battle. Yep.
So. Very interesting, but that tutorial game is quite important. Scott and I have played this, and we played 2 of the tutorial games just to kind of get your feet wet with the system.
And the tutorial game still feels like a full experience. I didn't feel like I was playing. There's a lot of like games where they tell you to play the tutorial, and I didn't feel that it was too
even heavier,
training wheelsy.
Even sometimes I've never played the tutorial game of Maria. And I feel like if you don't play the full game, you're missing out on the fullness of the game.
Yeah, and I kind of felt that with Arkwright too. Yes, you're missing out on the fullness of this game in the respect that the deck building adds like some interesting meta and a lot of new decisions to think about. But I still felt like it was a full experience playing the tutorial, and I think it's kind of crucial to learn how the cards work.
Right.
You're not going to know how to construct a good deck until you've played with the cards.
Until you understand what they do and why certain ones are good and why it's good to have multiples of this card.
Yeah, so this game plays 20 to 60 minutes, I think is what it said on BGG.
Yeah, because really it's like a player elimination. You go until you eliminate the opposing Earl.
Yeah, which I could see it spanning between 20 to 60 minutes. I think our sessions probably lasted about 30 minutes each.
30 minutes, yeah.
And if you're counting the deck construction, obviously that's going to add a little bit of time on the beginning of the game. But
which I think is good, though.
I think it is good. Yeah.
As you kind of... We haven't talked about our game where we deck constructed, but even the meta before the game, you're like, how is this deck going to work against certain strategies?
Right.
My strategy was basically I'm going to try and outlast Nick. Mm-hmm. I had multiple princes. I had Banquet, which is a political card, which allows you to draw 2 cards or 3 cards in a turn, basically. And so I was just getting my engine going. I drew back-to-back Banquets, and so I was able to really get the cards I wanted. I bequeathed my prince quite quickly, and then was able to it looked as if I was in going to go to 3 generations of rulers. Mm-hmm. Like I was going to have me as king and then pass that on to my heir, and then he would pass that on to his heir. So I would have just outlasted you, and you would have had to beat me in the muscle game.
Right.
Which you did.
Which, thankfully I built my deck to do that. So we played the tutorial, and I ended up winning by muscle barely.
Yep.
And if I had to draw a card at the end of my turn, I would have lost.
Right.
So I was thankful that I was able to win on my last turn before I lost. And then when we deck build, focused primarily on a more aggressive strategy.
Yeah, my aggressiveness was I used some monks to add cubes.
To the Vikings,
So what it is you have these cubes here that are in your color, and you seed those cubes in this little leather pouch, which is fantastic component quality. We'll probably get into that in a minute. But you start with one of each color in the bag. But then when you play the monk, it allows you to add 2 cubes to the bag. Or if you play a vassal, it allows you to add 1 cube.
So let's take a step back for a second. We mentioned that this game is a dueling card game, right? And we've mentioned games like Magic and Ashes. There's a lot of games in this market. Why should we care about Ortus Regni over any of those games?
Okay, first of all, the card art plays really well into the theme, which is a unique theme.
Yeah, so let's stay on the card art for a second.
You can kind of see it.
You can kind of see it on the cover if you're watching YouTube. Probably can't see it very well on the card there, but there's literally no text on any of these cards. The art is gorgeous and
varied as well.
You have a great cloth player aid. It tells you exactly what every one of your cards does, so your cards aren't like messied up with all of the text. And then honestly, once you play a game of it, you don't even need the text on the card. It's just nice to not even have it there because the cards are simple enough in what they do that you're just like, oh yeah, this is a land. I know exactly what it's for.
If you think back to collectible card games that some of you guys have ever played, I mean, I can think back to certain cards that I've like in Yu-Gi-Oh that I played where I can still tell you exactly what the effect is. And I'll never read that text again. But I still can tell you exactly what it does. And so this is similar, except you just need the upfront of teaching it.
Yeah, it's an interesting like artistic design choice that they made. And I think it really speaks well to this game. And the cover of this is actually one of my favorite board game art covers ever.
Right.
It's evocative. You look at it and I immediately am drawn to this box. It's this black box. And on the front, you just have different art in like a grid format. It's like a 4x4 grid format.
Almost a gallery aspect.
Yeah, and I just want to know what the hell is in this box and what is this game about. And it feels unique compared to these other dueling card games. And I'm trying to really place exactly why it feels unique. I think a lot of it is just the way the cards interact with each other. It's a bit more simple. You don't have... With Magic or Ashes, there's so many cards in the universe, right?
Right.
And they have all sorts of different text and varied abilities and stuff. And that's all cool. But this game is just, I don't know. I feel like it just takes everything down to like the bare level.
Yeah.
But there's still some really interesting synergy between these cards, but you don't need all that extra fluff. It's just, I think when it comes down to the deck construction, it's like, how many lands do you want in your deck? Because the more lands you have, the more armies you can have. So it may be a more aggressive strategy against your opponent.
Not only does it give you the ability to recruit armies, it gives you a place to put them.
Yeah, but then so now if you have a lot of lands, you also have to consider potentially getting allies to prevent some of the take that that's in this game, which I don't like take that. And I was kind of worried about it in this game. It's not that big of a deal.
No, they're not overly busted powers.
It feels okay too when it happens. Like if I lose a card from like when you play Intrigue, it's something that I knew full well could have happened. I probably planned for it in my deck, and it never feels like it's a terrible thing. I
also realized, how we talked about vassals having multiple uses? I just remembered another one with political struggles.
Yeah.
Because then you can, when Nick plays a political card like Treachery or Intrigue, he can then play a vassal with it. And the way I kind of rules explanation it is you bring the political heat, but you also bring the muscle to kind of like force it in. And then I can play allies to counter it, but not allies alone if he played a vassal. So there was an instance where he played one of the political cards with a vassal, and I played allies with a vassal. And you can go back in a game of chicken and go as many times as you guys can play vassals.
Yeah, and I think that's what they do in this game is they put a lot of functional like abilities and things these cards can do. So like the vassal can do all these things that has all these different purposes. It's not just a card that's used for this singular reason. So you only have in the game, you have what?
15
12,
cards.
15, yeah, 15 cards.
15 cards that will be in your deck.
Yeah.
You've also got some...
Well, in your deck will be 24 cards, but 15 types of cards
15
could
types of
potentially
card,
be in your deck. Yeah.
And like I told you, you could really just do 4 types of cards, and there are 6 copies of every card. So you could really just have a deck of 4 different types of cards.
If you really want to focus on a specific strategy, yeah.
But you're going to get some other cards as well. There's the jousting deck, the battle deck, the armies deck, and the Vikings.
There's a lot of different unique strategies and ways to utilize these cards that it's refreshing on how little of a card set you have in this game and how much you can do with it.
Right.
I think it's a great weeknight game for sure.
Yeah.
You can definitely go for an aggressive strategy. You can go for a defensive strategy. You can focus on doing a longevity strategy of making sure you have churches, and so you can, what is it called when you bequeath? Yeah, if you want to bequeath,
so you can play that strategy, or you could do like
your cards back in your hand,
or you could do like a engine building where you like play out market towns, play your fields, play banquets, and then that can get you a ton of units or maybe champions. You could play like 5 or 6 champions, and then you could play those from your hands and not even have to worry about recruiting.
Another really cool strategy that I think would be fun to explore is you could get a couple market towns, or maybe even just one market town, but you will kind of maybe a few, just so you can make sure you probably draw one and they're not all shuffled on the bottom of your deck, and then get a bunch of land, because once you get a market town out and then you place land, anytime you place a land out in your kingdom, you get to draw an army. If you have a market town, you get to draw 2 armies.
Right.
There's actually an action that's separate where you just draw an army, or if you have a market town, you draw 2 armies. And that's a whole action. If you can lay land, which is going to let you play more armies when you attack, it also lets you draw armies. So it's a 2-for-1 action. It's really efficient.
Right.
So I think that would be a fun strategy, is beef up your deck with tons of land cards. Don't waste an action just drawing armies. Play the land so you can hold more armies, and it lets you draw more armies.
How about flip that? What if you played no lands and played intrigue as well, and just stole all of your opponent's lands? While you may not be getting any, you still have to have a land to field that army. So then when the combat happens, you don't have a place to put them.
Well, and you're still hindering your opponent, because if you're stealing all of their lands, then they're not going to have a lot of ability to attack or defend their fiefdom.
Right. So they're like, each of these strategies almost all counter each other in a way, because then you can also have a ton of champions and then like declare jousts and be like, oh, I just want to steal all your stuff. Yeah,
you could go a jousting strategy. You could also go a strategy where you introduce a king. Like, you actually, as the player, we both play earls, and you can become a king. So one of us could become king if you play enough banners. And then you also have the Viking strategy. These Vikings will come out partway through the game, and they'll start causing attacks like almost every other round at that point.
Right.
And if you don't have control of the pouch, so you have not seeded the pouch with most of your cubes, and your opponent has a lot of their cubes in it, the Vikings are most likely going to attack you a lot. And that's a free attack outside of, like, if Dylan has a lot of his cubes in his pouch and the Vikings keep attacking me, that's a free attack he does on me. And it's not at the expense of his armies, and it's not during his turn. So he gets to do another turn on top of the Vikings attacking me.
Right.
So there's just a lot of avenues towards victory.
Yeah, and it all starts with the deck construction. This is actually the wooden block that you put all your cards in.
Yeah.
It's got a spot.
Totally unnecessary, but it's cool.
Yeah, it's cool. And it kind of gives you, like, so you can actually see the cards instead of having to, like, sift through them like you would in a traditional card game. It starts here, and you kind of get an idea, and then you has this big spot for your deck to actually put in.
Yeah.
And it starts here with deciding, how do I want to try and run my earldom? How do I want to run this kingdom to best beat out or last longer than my opponent?
Yeah.
Totally different. I think that's why, because it's not just like I'm going to kick your butt. Like that's not just the one strategy. It's also trying to outlast.
There's Outlast, but there's also some really cool little layers of strategy to think about. You have to consider the Vikings and that little mechanic in the game. You have to consider jousting and the way it's sort of like mini poker hands. You have even like regular combat. You're going to draw a combat card, and it's going to tell you defender victory, attack victory, or the church decides,
or a normal fight.
And if the church decides, and like I don't have the church or the monastery, Dylan will pick defender, right? If I'm attacking the aggressor and he's the defender, he says defender wins. So defenders take no casualties, and all of the excess attack damage that I have dealt to Dylan actually falls back on me.
And I take a what's it called? Like a ransom, or you have to pay a ransom because
if I submitted like a prince to fight in combat.
Yeah, I capture that prince lord, as they call it, if they're like sitting in one of the buildings.
Yeah, so there's a lot of tension. Usually you can set yourself up for victory in combat as the aggressor if you are in a good position, but there's always that slight chance that it could go wrong for you. Unless, of course, your opponent doesn't have any land to support, like to put troops out, in which case you don't actually even draw a battle card. I just, will come over and smack up Dylan pretty hard.
Right.
Which did happen.
Yeah, that was maybe the biggest moment of the second game.
Yeah, so let's get to that. So the show is playing for Tesuji. Again, Tesuji is finding that best moment, that smart decision during the game that changed like the tide of battle.
Right.
And in terms of Go, it's the best local play. So we were talking about that after our second match with the deck building on what that Tesuji moment was. And Dylan started the game really strong.
Like I said, I got back-to-back banquets. I built up. I had already bequeathed. I had done real well.
You also seeded the Viking back, so there was 5 of your cubes to my 1 or something crazy.
Yeah, I played back-to-back monks.
Yep.
And so I was sitting pretty.
So it was looking a little scary for me, a little hairy. And it got to the point where I was able to get enough land out, and I had enough army that I was able to kind of fight back Dylan's defenses. And then I think the moment that really sealed the deal for me was, since I focused on my troops so much, I just went in and attacked his palace, and I had enough damage and he didn't have enough troops to support it, that I was able to destroy his palace. And then it also, since his palace is destroyed, all the cards in that tableau of his also disappeared. So then he ran out of pretty much all the land you had.
Right.
So you weren't able to defend your other castle. So it kind of left yourself open at that point, and you were scrambling, just playing all your cards as defense. But I had so much attack at that point because I had those market towns, which are giving me more armies on my land.
Right. Yeah,
I can support more armies.
Yeah. And there were things I probably could have done better to counter it. I look back over the player aid. I had some intrigue that I could have played and stole some of your armies. That would have lessened your attack power. I could have played more cards for the tower. I could have had a ton of towers. And at one point I did near the end. I think I had 8 towers out and you attacked them all with 8 strength.
Yeah. Well, I think I had 12 attack.
12 attack. Yeah, that's right. And so I lost quite a few of those towers.
Right.
So there are things that I could have done better. And it came down to it where I just I had been too fast at the beginning and lost all my momentum by the end of the game.
Yeah. So do we have concerns about this game? You've played it twice more than I have, but you've only deck build once.
Yeah. Like I said, I've played the tutorial game 3 times and the deck build once. I think maybe the hard thing is playing it or introducing it to people, because now I've got more experience. You've got more experience. You understand the card synergies a little bit better. So if you're playing with a new player, it may... it's not as I think of this game almost in like a PAX series. That's where I connect it most to outside of the 1v1 because of
really
the nature of the cards being different. But you're not, all the cards being interconnected in some way, shape or form. They have multi-use. And the nice thing about I look at PAX Ren, you both kind of have to play out at least some portion of the game until the comic cards come out. And I think about this, you could really beat on someone quite quickly.
There was a moment at the beginning of the game where I thought I could kill your palace. You had just a little too much defense. It was going to be, or I didn't have just enough armies. I think I needed one more land.
I remember,
because I had the armies, but I couldn't put them out.
Right.
So yeah, there was a moment where I was like, wow, this could end really fast.
Exactly. And there could be moments like that could really sour people if they're playing on their first time.
Sure.
And I think it's deep for the amount of components and stuff. It's a pretty long teach.
Yeah, so I think that's the biggest negative for me, and honestly, probably the only one I have right now, other than It is a little random occasionally. You could get really screwed over. But
yeah, and you and I both had it.
Well, yeah, and I feel like that's minimal. And I think it adds to the tension of this game. I don't think it's a bad design choice. But yeah, the teach is very involved. And it's not like any little piece of like rules that you're teaching me weren't complicated to understand. It's just there's a lot to know. You have to go through all the cards that are in play and how they interact with each other and what the goal of the game is and how to achieve it. And teach the Vikings, teach battles, and then you're ready to play. But there is a lot going on. But it was pretty easy to pick up on. Like once you went through the teach, even though the teach was a little long, I would say maybe 20, 30-minute teach.
Yeah.
Once we started playing, I didn't ask a ton of questions. It just kind of made sense.
Yeah, and I think the best thing to do when teaching this game, this can be maybe my word of advice, is to teach what each card does, teach combat, teach the outside things like jousting and a few of those other things. Then go back over it and talk how a turn's going to go. Talk about review a turn, take one action, cover those actions. Talk about the optional action of tower, draw a card, rinse and repeat. This is the rulebook has it, but there's also the 2-page like cardboard player aid that Nick has here.
Yeah.
And there's actually a breakdown of everything there. It does a really good job of simplifying the rules. The rule book just goes into depth on everything.
Yeah. I think the best way to teach this is play out your hand like you're taking your actions like each turn and see how the cards interact together and explain as you go kind of thing. Right. You don't have to play the game. Just like, actually be visual in your teaching. Don't just lay a card down and say, this card does this. All right, next card.
And that's kind of how I did it. I laid out like a mock fiefdom.
Yeah, and it definitely helps to see how things connect more if you do it that way.
Yeah. Maybe the other downer I have on this is possibly the component quality. The component quality is too much. Like this box is thicker than some boxes. It's a beautiful piece, but totally unnecessary.
Yeah, there's this giant wood piece that you can put your cards in. It's unnecessary. You could murder somebody with it.
The leather bag is legitimately leather with really thick, like, drawstring. So, like, this is nice. This is better than most.
Which some people are going to roll their eyes at this, but, like, I'm vegan, and then Scott is vegetarian, but tries to do vegan stuff occasionally. Leather components in games, that goes against, like, I try not to buy leather, right? I don't want to support animal cruelty. And
didn't even think of that.
That makes it like a weird thing for me. Like if I want to buy this game, but it has leather in it, where do I put my, like ethics versus, like
you could just give it to me.
It's just a game. Yeah. But I still, I vote with my dollar kind of thing.
Right. And I totally get that.
But it's a minor thing. And like, it's a little leather pouch. Like it's, I'm at the end of the day, I'm really not supporting animal cruelty that much, but
right.
I've seen like the werewolf game that comes with the leather.
Ultimate Werewolf.
The Legacy.
Legacy.
Yeah, Werewolf Legacy. Now that's fake leather. I actually asked, but that would be a consideration of why I wouldn't necessarily buy that game. So it's just something to consider for people that are like actually manufacturing games, is that not everyone wants leather in their game.
But as we maybe mentioned at the top of the show, you can buy this from their website for $60. It's a little steep maybe, but you're getting into nice component quality, and you think about it like the meat of the game is there to maybe justify it. You think of games like the Pack Series. The Pack Series is really just a bunch of cards, but yet they run at about 40 to 60.
The $60 price point to get into this from their website. Again, if you're interested in buying it, it's John, that's JON Sudbury-games.myshopify.com. Joel will have that in the description.
Thanks, Joel.
Thanks, Joel. So yeah, the production is great on this. It really is a prize.
This rule book is almost canvas.
Yeah, like if I own this game, it'd be like a prize thing in my collection. Like it is beautiful, but does it need to be this? No, it could be a $30 game, maybe even $20. There's less cards in here than Race for the Galaxy. Just let me buy the cards. I don't need all this extra fluff. And that's a hell of a game for a $20 to $30 price point.
Yeah, could be a classic for like heavy gamers for $20.
So I wonder if it was to a detriment. Like they should have done a Kickstarter deluxe, you backed it, here's your collector's edition, and then release just the cards and, the cubes and stuff separate, I honestly wonder if the game would have picked up more steam. It would have been more accessible for people to afford.
Right.
Yeah, because $60 for a card game, that's a lot of money. But there's a lot of replayability here. So even if you want to spend the $60, you will get the gameplay out of it.
And we've only covered it as a 1v1 game. On the website, you can actually buy expansions, which in reality are just different colored cubes and another set of cards with that color back. So it makes it to where it then becomes a 2 to 4 player game, and then if you buy another expansion, which are two other colors, it could be a 2 to 6 player game.
Yeah, so it's not adding any new content; it's just adding more players. I really would like to try it with 3 or 4. I think more than that, it would drag. Yeah. You also run the risk of player elimination depending on how the game plays out. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot to love about this game. My other potential concern, it's not really concern yet. I've only played it twice, but I do wonder maybe if there could potentially at some point in the game, a meta or some sort of strategy evolve that is kind of the dominating strategy where everyone feels like the best thing to do is just to get a lot of lands and build up armies and attack.
Right.
But then I also think if both players are doing that, you're kind of countering each other with...
Right.
So I don't think right now I don't see a winning strategy surfacing, but I need to explore this game a lot more to see if that's
honestly. I'll probably take it to Origins. You and I can get it played.
Yeah,
because it's fun, and you can play Scott.
I'm very satisfied with, and this was a game I just played it today. This is like super initial impressions. I didn't really know anything about it other than the brief stuff Dylan had mentioned,
and it was pretty.
And it was pretty. So I'm like, all right, I'll play it, and I'm glad I did. I am very thoroughly impressed with this game.
Yeah, I quite agree.
If you're looking for a dueling card game, but you don't want to buy into the whole living card game where you feel like you need to buy extra cards,
or even just anything where you're having to build the deck like prior,
or the stupid Fantasy Flight games that were even like Mage Wars or something where you feel like you need to buy 2 box sets,
2 core sets.
So you buy the game twice just to get the amount of cards you need to deck build. This game is great. You have your deck building, and it's also something you can play casually. It's not going to be it's not a lifestyle game.
Heck, even on that,
it's the perfect casual dueling card
game. On
the
player aid here, it actually gives suggestions for specific deck styles. If you flip it over to the other side, it says sample decks for a political deck, sample deck for a military style deck. So it actually lists
emissary and church deck, politics deck, lord deck, land and army deck.
So it gives you those, so you don't even really have to deck build. You just pick from one of those and build exactly as it says.
Yes, and deck building is fun at the beginning of this game, trying to really think about how, and it's hard. It's a hard decision because you only have 24 cards. And as you get closer to reaching that 24, you realize like, oh, I forgot to put this card in here. I feel like I need one more prince.
Exactly. That's what you said. You're like, oh man, I completely forgot an important card. What card was that?
By the flags. I had no flags.
Oh, you have no banners.
Yeah, no banners.
Which are required for bequeathing. So you would have basically just like been running the gambit to try and like win in
before I run out of cards to draw, which wouldn't have happened. So that would have been real dangerous.
Right.
And I wouldn't have been able to become king either with that.
Right.
Because if I had forgotten that. But that's what you want in deck building. You want it to feel like, all right, I can make the perfect deck with 30 cards, but I'm only allowed to have 24.
Right.
And that's kind of where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So real big thumbs up for me. Really, really enjoyed it. What do you think so far?
Yeah,
happy with your purchase?
Yeah, I'm happy with my purchase. Like I said, I bought it secondhand. It was open, but the cards were still in shrink, so it was essentially new. And got it half price. You know, can't complain for that. So a $30 purchase, I'm big thumbs up here.
And I've been playing a lot of games recently where in the past I'd play a game like, oh, I kind of want to own that. Recently I've been like, I don't need to own those games. It was fun. I'll play when it comes to table, but I don't need it. Ortus Regni is one that I actually could be on my like short list to buy eventually. I was that pleased with my first 2 plays of it, and I'm looking forward to playing it more with Dylan.
Like, it's simple. I mean, there's 15 cards you need to know, but it's got depth. It's got more than...
It's got legs.
It's got legs. It's got more than the general game for... I mean, even at $60, it's got more in there than a lot of games at that price point nowadays.
Yeah.
A lot of them you can kind of explore. They may have more mechanisms, but when it comes to depth of exploring those mechanisms, you may not have it. Mm-hmm. Whereas this, I think, does.
Yeah.
And lots of different strategies. And if you're a fan of like constructing a deck, but not like a traditional deck builder like a Clank or a Dominion. This is totally different. This is you think very hard at the beginning of the game and then see if it works.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, very cool. And I don't really think I have anything else to add here.
No. I think if you guys are interested, you'll see the title of this. You should definitely at least look at the art for this game. It's gorgeous.
What's the name of the guy you said you watched the review of?
Bottom Shelf Gaming. Bottom Shelf Board Games on YouTube.
Yep.
He did a great review of this, kind of even talks about how it's odd to see a card game with no text.
Yeah, see it visually on the table. I don't know, there's definitely an allure to this game, just seeing it.
Yeah, you're like, what is going on? Why are there wooden blocks? Mm-hmm. That was maybe one of the things I was like, what are the wooden blocks for? Yeah. They're just holding cards.
They have no effect on the gameplay.
It's a fancy deck box.
Yeah.
Or a fancy binder.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's a great one. Production is through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that helps or hinders it, but it's a marvel of design. I'll say that.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. So let's talk about what we've been into recently. I like to mix things up and not just talk about board games on this show. So Dylan, I know you've been really excited about something recently. I'll let you start.
So if you follow me on Twitter, you recently saw that I watched the All Elite Wrestling pay-per-view, Double or Nothing. It was, and Nick is already kind of giving me is this really happening on my show? This was the debut event for a brand new company that is going to basically go toe to toe with WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment.
What channel is it on?
So the pay-per-view you had to buy.
Oh, it's pay-per-view. Okay.
Their first event was, and they're still doing a few more pay-per-views until the fall. You can get those on the Bleacher Report Live app, which, if you know, is owned by Turner, and their weekly television broadcast is going to be on TNT.
Okay.
This is big because they had done a show prior last year called All Elite, one I didn't even watch, and Double or Nothing, which was last Saturday, was their show, like their first show, and they had, before the show had started, they had already dropped their Turner television deal. They had already got that without doing anything. They just said, here's our resume. And they're like, here's a multi-million-dollar television deal.
It's crazy.
I know. It's like if I went into a job interview and then they gave me the president of the organization, like instantly.
All right. So for those handful of people maybe that are into WWE that are listening to this, why should they care about this?
Why should they care about All Elite? So if you know anything about WWE, it's a little stale. The matches feel similar. Like they've used a lot of the same storylines from like the 90s and 2000s. You look, they can kind of like, oh, this character emulates how this character was in like older days.
They've got lazy writing.
Recently, John Moxley, who was the biggest free agent in like wrestling, he signed with AEW and was the cliffhanger. Like he came out and beat up the people in the main event. And so if you know do you know what the term kayfabe means?
Mm-mm.
It means they stay in character even outside of wrestling, like outside of their shows. And so he went on the Talk Is Jericho podcast, and Chris Jericho was actually one of the guys he beat up at the end of the show. And Jericho said, like in kayfabe, he was like, we recorded this part before Double or Nothing. If I saw John Moxley now, I would punch him in his face for what he did to me after Double or Nothing. But he kind of did like a shoot, which is what they call like where you do it like a show. And he talked about his 8 years at WWE. He was there until April of this year, and then now is at All Elite, and trashed them for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. Spent 2 hours talking about how poor their writing is, poor their creative development is. And it really opened your eyes, and it opened my eyes to realize I probably will never watch a WWE show again.
Wow.
Because what they did in Double or Nothing was so good. It used interesting characters, a mix of different wrestling styles. They had a guy named Luchasaurus, who was a huge Hispanic man with a like lucha style. And he had a like dinosaur mask on with a moving mouth when he talked. And it was crazy. Like, and just to see like the lucha style combat against like the traditional American style of wrestling. They had Chinese, the first ever Chinese wrestling league. They brought a team in from there, and it's just crazy to see all these people.
The mix of wrestling cultures kind of come into one.
Yeah,
It's
and
cool.
like I'm a huge nerd outside of wrestling, and maybe the flagship wrestler Kenny Omega is like hardcore anime and came out in a robe that was from the anime. I can't even remember. It's the online one where they're all in the online video game.
I know.
Sword Art
Yeah,
Online.
I know what you're talking about. I didn't know the name of it. But
Yeah, so he came out in that, and he's came out in Armor from Destiny, the video game. So like,
okay.
he appeals to me.
Yeah.
And so like, this is like a huge deal to actually shake up the competition, shake up the wrestling industry, and like
bring more creative, like innovative juices.
Competition's always good.
Mhm.
I mean, like they say the same thing about like the NFL video games, because there hasn't been a very good new one in almost a decade because EA owns the license.
Yeah.
And so if there's competition, you have to up what you're providing.
Yep.
Or you go out of business.
Yeah,
It's quite interesting.
You have me mildly interested, even though like I'm not.
You're actually not
into wrestling, but I get the charm of wrestling. I've watched Glow on Netflix, which it's
so's my wife.
Yeah, it's actually a really enjoyable show, and it kind of gives me a respect for wrestling that I didn't realize I had, like to see kind of really what wrestling's about.
Yeah.
And even though it's silly, it's also not.
It's not. I mean, there is in the main event, Kenny Omega's nose starts bleeding, and you realize within 5 minutes he had got punched in the nose and it was broken.
Well, it's a dance on stage. They're acting. It's a performance.
Yeah.
It's entertainment.
They did some spots that were really crazy. Like Chris Jericho pulled the table out from underneath. You know, he's like, he's going to set the table up, flipping through it. You know, he was holding the table and getting ready to set it up, and Kenny dove over the ropes against the table and knocked the table over onto him. And I was like, I've never seen that. Like literally doing things with like traditional wrestling props that I've never seen.
Yeah.
So it was just fun.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
I have been into another television show recently that's also brand new. I won't get into spoilers because you should watch it, even though you probably already know some spoilers yourself because it's a historical event. HBO just wrapped up Game of Thrones, and it's ushered in Chernobyl. It's a 5-episode miniseries.
5 episode miniseries.
4 episodes are out right now. The 5th episode, I think, airs this upcoming week. Actually, by the time this episode drops, I'm sure all 5 episodes have already been out. Man, this show is phenomenal. It's actually the highest rated television show in IMDb history right now.
Really?
That's really impressive after 4 episodes. I think it actually achieved that after 3 episodes.
So describe the style of show. Are we talking drama? We talking thriller?
Drama.
Okay.
But it also, like a lot of people said, this is the scariest television they've seen in a while. And I think it's because it's real and it's very heavy. And
we talking real as in like because of the like radioactiveness?
Yeah, well, and it's also like this actually happened. People actually went through this, the horrors that they experienced because of the nuclear reactor meltdown. If you're not aware of what Chernobyl is, in I think 1986 in April, there was a meltdown. One of the cores of the Chernobyl reactor plant outside of a town in the Ukraine basically had a meltdown, and the core was exposed, which had tons and tons of radiation that it just leaked out into the atmosphere. And it polluted, obviously, the nuclear plant, that town.
Just the soil itself.
And it actually could have been an absolute catastrophic event. It really could have. It could have really impacted the whole world in a very bad way.
Right.
I didn't realize how serious Chernobyl really was for everybody. And it goes into how the USSR tried to basically conceal this and make sure it didn't leak out, that people didn't know they messed up.
Good pun.
The Soviet Union, it leaked out. So it's cool to see how that all unravels, and it made me really want to dig into the history of everything. And actually, the show is very true to the historical events. They had to make some liberties to make it work as far as a story television show, but I think the liberties are justified. And I think they really stayed true to what happened. And man, it is so messed up. It's so intense. It's just very, very heavy. But it's just like mouth dropping. Like the first episode is just all about the night it happened and what happened during that night and how people freaked out and just crazy. And then as it goes on, they get over the initial like hurdle, like, okay, this happened. Then it's like, how do we help prevent this? And how do we stop it from affecting everybody? And just seeing all of the crazy angles that they had to approach this, or all the different problems they had to overcome. Wow. It's a really great show. I really, really recommend watching it.
Cool.
Especially if you don't have HBO, get HBO now. You can get it free for a month, I think, or actually it's a week. I think you can get it free for a week.
You can binge.
But that's 5 episodes, man.
Yeah, you can binge.
Watch an episode a day. Cancel your HBO subscription. Don't pay a penny, and totally worth it. Great television show.
Yeah. So
highly recommend.
And then your album of the episode.
Yes, sir. So I do album of the week on this show because I am a big music nerd. If you're watching YouTube, I actually have the vinyl of this one. It's called The Transfiguration of Vincent by M. Ward. He is a singer-songwriter.
Is it Vince we know?
No.
Oh, I tried.
So yeah,
sorry, Vince.
This I think is my favorite late evening album. It's on Spotify, YouTube. You can find it wherever. But it's really good. It's just a guy and his guitar. I think there's some backing instruments here or there throughout it, but it's really just a very stripped down album. Some of the standout tunes on this is Vincent O'Brien. Really like Undertaker. Not wrestling related.
I thought I got him. They got me.
There's Helicopter's great. I mean, all of these are really great.
Right.
The duet for guitars number 3 on the album is just it's an instrumental with his guitar. Love it. And then Let's Dance, closer to the end of the album, it kind of closes out the album. Is very beautiful. Highly, highly recommend this. Give it a listen, especially, it's late evening. Get yourself a nice whiskey or a beer, unwind, maybe Friday evening. You don't have any big plans. Dim the lights, put this on, turn it up. It's just relaxing and it'll just let you just be at ease. I highly recommend it. That is Transfiguration of Vincent by M. Ward. It's my favorite album from him. He's great. He has a very smoky voice, but this is my favorite album from him.
You say smoky voice, it makes me want to light a cigar with it.
Dude, I'm telling you, you get a whiskey and a cigar. I've never smoked a cigar, but I feel like it's fitting for this. Very good though.
It's a lovely experience.
Yes. So Dylan, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to cover this obscure but deserving of attention game.
And yeah, thank you for teaching me this. I'm looking forward to playing more of it at Origins or whenever. Have a 2-player game day. We'll play this, Duelosaur, whatever else.
Yeah.
Quite fun. Really enjoyed it. That was Ortus Regni again.
Yep. From John Sudbury.
Yep. But yeah, thanks for coming on. I am Nick. This has been Playing for Tesuji. And remember to keep cardboard gaming a reality in your life.